Well, basically, what's going on in Syria is you have people that didn't like to be oppressed. There's been generations of oppression by the Syrian people by Bashar al-Assad, and they basically rose up peacefully and said they didn't want that oppression anymore. Bashar al-Assad decided he was going to respond with violence, and you have over 500,000 people dead and almost a majorly displaced country that's spread out throughout the Middle East and in Europe, and it's a terrible, devastating situation. So a doctor from Chicago who's Syrian that decided he wanted to go in and do something about this, found his way in Syria and the conflict zones, and was able to witness, tragically, but thankfully he was there, a devastating bombing and devastating attacks by the Syrian regime in which a lot of people were killed, a lot of innocent civilians. He talked about, the carnage, the sadness, the fact that there were children indiscriminately taken out. And it just brought home to me the reality of this, that these are real people with hopes, dreams, aspirations, desires that are being killed by a brutal madman empowered by Iran and Russia. So the Syrian people feel very left behind right now. They're in the middle of this major war. They understand that this war has led to basically the creation of a caliphate in ISIS that's spread into Iraq and everywhere else in the Middle East. And they know that they just simply want freedom. And instead of actually hearing the West talk about a plan to fix it, instead they've only been met with inaction. Starting with the red line in Syria and the failure to punish the Assad regime for using chemical weapons, a violation of something that we've held dear since World War I, that no chemical weapons can be used on the battlefield. And so these folks, as they get killed, they may hear some platitudes, but they see no action, and so they feel isolated and left behind. Yeah, one of the things I noticed in the refugee camps, I was in one recently on the border of Turkey, is you have this whole generation of young kids that are there. As these kids are growing up, if they don't learn how to read and write, they don't learn about the greater world out there, they're more likely to be recruited by the next generation of ISIS or the next Al-Qaeda that comes along. So this is a short-term fight, but it's also a long-term fight for ideals. But when you see the humanity that exists there and just, these children just want to go to school and they smile and play like any of the children we see, it really pulls on your heartstrings. Syria needs to be, I think a no-fly zone needs to be created over Syria, or at least parts of Syria. And that's where you also begin the process of building a post-Assad governance. Obviously, we have to make sure humanitarian aid gets in. We have to make sure we destroy ISIS and some of these jihadist groups. But you're not going to fix the problem in the Middle East without getting rid of Bashar al-Assad. I think that has to be done. And that starts with the no-fly zone, and there's probably many steps after. The world reacts very well to American leadership. This is something that we've held since World War II. The thing to keep in mind is the Syrian war is not going to burn itself out. This isn't something that just someday is just embers. This is spreading. It's like a volcano, and it's lighting new fires everywhere else. So it's not just a human tragedy. It's actually a real safety problem for the future of this world.